Hello, Steve White, Steve Arts 89. I watched Doctor Sleep a little while ago, and of course, it made me think of The Shining. And I started looking at videos on YouTube and about Doctor Sleep, and then I started looking at videos on The Shining, and it opened up a very interesting world. I saw The Shining as a kid. I saw it through the eyes of a kid in a very simple way as a ghost story about a haunted hotel and a boy with special powers and a father who was alcoholic and weak, and the boy was able to see things that normal people wouldn't have been able to, and that there were things in this hotel that were real. Um, and I didn't really question it, and I really loved the movie. I saw it in Australia. I saw it in like on video, on TV, I think, and then on video. And I own my own copy of it. It was one of the few films I actually owned, along with Misery and Salem's Lot, because there was a Stephen King video collection. I was lucky enough to get a few videos of the films, and it's funny how that version has been kind of preserved because when Kubrick first did the film, he did it in widescreen, and it was 2 hours and 20 minutes long, roughly. And then when he released it internationally, he cut 20 minutes out. And when it was released on video, it was done in pan scan, full frame for TV. And that's how I saw it on video. And then when it came out on DVD, they kept the same format, and they also kept the same length. So from my rental video to my bought video to my DVD sort of experience, that was pretty consistent. And then later on, I bought the film on Blu-ray and discovered that it was available in widescreen. It was actually widescreen when you watched it, and it was 20 minutes longer. I didn't realize this right away because I just had a bit of a look at the footage to compare it, but I didn't actually have the time to watch it and didn't realize it was 20 minutes. And the bits I did see, I thought I'd just forgotten that because I hadn't watched it in years, and I didn't realize there were actual 20 minutes of footage that I hadn't seen. Now, these deleted scenes are available on YouTube and that, and the other version I've still got DVD, and then there's the Blu-ray version, and people sort of have grown up with different versions, and I grew up with that one, and like I said, I didn't really question it. And I really loved watching it. I remember my first year of uni, I was staying in a dorm, which was like a big, long sort of, felt like a hotel for like 20 or 40 rooms. And during the middle of winter, in the break, pretty much everyone went home to their families, but I went home for a couple of days, but then I came back and I stayed pretty much 2 weeks alone in this empty building, which was like a hotel, and it was cold, and there was a mental asylum down near a lake, and someone had broken in once there and before and wandered in, and it was kind of scary. And I just remember feeling like I was in The Shining and watching The Shining a few times when I was alone in the building, which wasn't smart. So I really have a great affection for the film, and I was looking forward to seeing Doctor Sleep. Now, what I discovered when I watched all these videos, I'd heard about the documentary Room 237, and I'd always meant to watch it, and I'd seen, basically, there were a few documentaries on the making of the film because Kubrick is important, so of course people want to look at it. But I didn't realise how much interpretation the film had gone through, how many people there were reassessing this film and coming up with these kind of... Before I say this, I do actually realise that the film can be seen different ways, and you can actually view it as just mental illness, delusion, alcoholism, psychosis, and no actual any or all, and no actual ghost or paranormal. I get that you can look at it that way. I think you can also look at it the other way, that there are paranormal forces and they are affecting people. And some people will argue backwards and forwards, and I think it can work both ways, and I don't think Kubrick gave any one definitive version of the film. I think he made it ambiguous, and that was part of the horror and part of the point, was that you could interpret it your own way and could kind of get lost in it. And just like the hotel itself, I think that's brilliant. That's sort of the charm and the brilliance of the film. And what I find shocking is these people who think that they can work this film out, and there's like some psychological, desperate psychological need that these people have to find the answers in this film, and feel that they're important and they're special. And they're the one person who could work this film out, this genius movie. They could work it out because they're just that special. It's really tragic. The documentary Room 237 is just... It's not even a documentary. It's just people talking over footage. There's no names given. There's no responsibility. You don't know who's talking, what they're on about. And it's really desperate. There's one guy who's really sad. He goes on about... He believes that it's all about the moon landing and that it was faked, and Kubrick faked it, and this is his confession. And there are these ridiculous reasons, like Room 237, supposedly the moon is 100,000 miles away from Earth or something, which no textbook ever stated, and it isn't. And maybe someone miscorrectly stated that a distance somewhere along the line, but it's certainly not. It's just ridiculous. And the worst part is this guy actually lies and says, oh, there is no room 217 because the room that King stayed in was 217, and they changed it to 237 because they didn't want people to be afraid to stay in that room. So they said, can you make it this room, which is a room that doesn't exist, a number that doesn't exist. So they agreed to, and King stayed in the original room. You can see, you can check that that room exists, and it stated that room exists. But this person goes on to say, oh, it doesn't exist, Kubrick lied. And they just changed the name to make it a code and for a confession of the moon landing, because this person so desperately needs for that the moon landing not to have happened, and for that conspiracy theory to be right. And I find that so bizarre and interesting. And the documentary is interesting because it's a study of psychosis and how crazy people are in the need to read into a film things that aren't there, as opposed to actually what's in the film. There are documentaries that actually look into that. That's interesting, but this is not that. So I actually found that more fascinating than the study of the actual film, because you can read the film in different ways, and there are a lot of elements that are very interesting. There's one idea that the film is a response to Danny being molested by his father and abused by his father. And physical abuse, yes, you can see, and there is examples of that in the film itself and in his history. But the sexual abuse, another thing, it's another stretch, and you kind of look at the reasons a person gives and the way they look at things, and thinking, you have some problems with pedophilia. You are actually looking at this child and this situation, this film, through the eyes of a sexual interest, and it's really kind of disturbing, and I don't want to watch the film with that in mind. So there's so many different and disturbing ways that people are reading into this, and like I said, some of it seems really desperate. And I'm sorry, but my computer, it is hot, the fan is going, and it's noisy, and I hope that's... I've already had people tell me I talk too quietly, I'm not loud enough, and that's probably not good, but I'm not going to redo the video because I don't want to try and remember what I just said. But yeah, so I love the film. I have a history of it, as it's one of those films I grew up with that I loved, and everyone I knew watched it. It was one of those films that was respected, and everyone was scared by it and interested in it. And it has a lot of room for interpretation, and I think that is built in as part of the art of the film. But there's also a very warped and desperate need some people have to find something in it, and in some way claim some sort of ownership of the film, that I worked this out, I'm the one person who managed to work out this film, I'm a genius too. Like, they desperately need it, and it's really tragic. And I'm so disappointed that the actual film, Room 237, isn't a really good, interesting, long exploration of the film itself. It's just a bunch of conspiracy theory nuts talking about the most ridiculous things, probably not aware of that they are the actual example. They are what we're laughing at them, that they are like the joke in the film, not the film itself. We're not examining the film, we're examining them and how they have a desperate need to make something out of nothing, and that's fascinating in itself. But I think I'm going to leave it there because I can't think of anything else. I have some notes, but I can't see anything I've missed out. Like, oh God, the Minotaur is a lady who believes a shot of a guy skiing that promotes a ski lodge or a ski event is a minotaur, because Jack is like a bull, and I'm like, wow. It's so reaching, and it's just fascinating. I've been watching all these things, and some of it, like I said, is based in the music and based in some of the things Kubrick did do, like the silver room that he had made them remake it into gold, and because reading into all of that, like, was it because of the oh guys, I'm not even going to get into all that, but there are some little things that are kind of there. Like, the only thing I will give is the genocide of the Indians, the Native Americans. I do believe, obviously, that is mentioned in the film. It's mentioned in the history of the hotel, and I do believe that's part of the horror, part of the haunting, part of the blood that comes out of the elevators. That is sort of the history of. I do believe that in that symbolism and things like that are built into the film, whether they have one meaning or whether they have multiple meanings or whether they're there to be interpreted. They're interesting. They're there, and there's other things that's just people are just crazy in imagining, and I'm just a bit embarrassed for a few people, and I'm glad I'm not trying to answer any questions here. I'm just saying I'm fascinated by the film and the way people are looking at it, and I'm not trying to work it out and give any definitive answer and act like I've worked it out and I know, because I'm not that arrogant and I'm not that desperate and I don't need it. But I'm just going to stop it there. I'm going to keep looking at it. I'm going to keep watching videos and watching things and finding out what people think, because some of it is genuinely interesting and people are onto stuff that is into the film, that is built in or can be read in, and then other people are just crazy. But I'm going to leave it there, thanks. Feel free to tell me what you think. I love comments. It's fascinating. I'm fascinated to see what people say. But feel free to like or subscribe, and I don't know, keep watching The Shining. Thanks, bye.